This video will contain spoilers. If you haven't caught up to the manga, please catch up before you continue. One Piece chapter 910. Onward to Wano. This is coming off the heels of the Reverie arc, and of course the Reverie arc had some amazing moments which include somewhat of a Shanks reveal, a Green Bull reveal, a Rock's Pirates reveal, and just a ton of useful information overall. I guess some people don't even consider it an arc because of how short it was, but I can't tell you how amazing reading those chapters were for those few weeks. The Reverie had been anticipated for a long time, and I can say for a fact that it lived up to the hype. In Wano, from that chapter, it showed us that it was going to be a different atmosphere, a different environment. And of course, samurai was going to be the focus. We saw a baboon with his sword at the end of the chapter. And of course, Luffy even said, okay, this must be Wano, the land of the swordsmen, or sword baboons. But there's a few things we gotta talk about before we get into the crux of Wano, because this video is just gonna be highlighting what Wano is so far, of course from my perspective. And again, I'm gonna use some general information I get from my viewers, and also from the poll that I put up. Not really a poll, but I asked a question in the community tab about how do people feel about Wano so far, and overall it was a positive response. But when you look deeper within the community, it feels like a lot of people aren't enjoying Wano. Personally, when I talk to some of my friends within the community, they say that Wano is just okay. But we're gonna look at it. But before that, let's talk about why one would view Wano as just okay right now. First, let's talk about expectations. Before Wano even started, the hype had begun. But Wano had been hyped up for years. Because we know Oda was an assistant to the author of Rurouni Kenshin, and for a lot of people, they felt like this is where Oda would shine. This is where Oda would be at his best. Even surpass Enies Lobby and Marineford. Of course, I was weary because all this hype would lead to insane expectations. Even while we were in Whole Cake Island, we had editors coming out saying, hey, if you think this is good, just wait until we get to Wano. Wano is going to be amazing. So with that, while Whole Cake Island was going on, people were saying, I can't wait to just leave Whole Cake Island just for Wano. I don't care about anything else, just Wano. This was perplexing to me because the Luffy versus Katakuri fight was going on. Then again, that's the top 2, top 3 fight in One Piece. Top 1 in the anime, but people wanted to go to Wano. So now we're in Wano. We get to Wano. And Wano, from the beginning, it wasn't a long ride. It was a few chapters, and then we're in Wano, which was good because typically for One Piece, going from island to island, we have a slight hiccup or something happens where we don't get there right away. This didn't happen this time. Of course, when we got there, the crew separated because of the weird way of getting to Wano, but we got there. Now, in this video, I'm not going to show panel by panel what I'm talking about because we know how YouTube and copyright strikes are, and I don't want to lose my channel, but I will try to illustrate what I'm talking about through just different deviant arts and such. Okay, so we get to Wano and the crew is separated, and Luffy, of course, he meets Otama. And of course, this is the premium setup for One Piece in which Luffy meets somebody to connect to care more about the country or this island. Of course, he already had Momonosuke, but for this point, Otama was going to be the catalyst to make Luffy care about Wano, to want to save Wano even more. We then find out that Wano is polluted because of Kaito's factory, and that Otama doesn't eat as often as she would like. But the icing on the cake was that Otama was waiting for a man to come back to her. Portgas the Ace, which of course is Luffy's brother. That deepens the bond. The setup is there, and even at the end of the chapter, well, One Piece chapter 911, Basil Hawkins showed up, and Basil Hawkins had been the talk of the town for a while now, because ever since Kaito fell in chapter 795, we had no idea what was going on with Hawkins, and it seems that Hawkins had joined Kaito's crew. Great setup, and I was intrigued. I'm into it. I remember after that chapter that a lot of us were talking about Luffy and how he would handle the Ace thing. Would he try to wait it out and not tell Otama about Ace right away? Because we know Luffy and Ace, it's a touching subject, because of course Ace is dead, and the next chapter, Luffy comes right out and tells Otama, hey, Ace is dead. This shows some progression, I think, on Luffy's part from where he was, of course, at the end of Marineford, in which he's accepted Ace's death, and where he can tell Otama straight up, hey, Ace is gone. Like, there's no need to wait anymore. And it felt somewhat like the Laboon thing, but we had a definitive answer as to what happened. Ace was gone, so she had nothing more to look forward to. So it felt like Luffy was going to take the place of Ace and adventure or do whatever it takes to make Otama happy. And on brand with Wano and, of course, swords, we meet Tengiyama Hitetsu. He breaks down the 12 supreme grade weapons, the 21 excellent grade weapons, and the 50 fine grade weapons. Now, in a recent SBS, it was confirmed that Whitebeard's glaive, or whatever that is one of the 12 supreme grade weapons. And I'm surprised we didn't catch this in the chapter where Whitebeard's glaive was right there. It was right in front of us. I plan on making a video about this, but it's something to key in on here. It's going to be weapons and not just swords that are supreme grade and excellent grade, because I know for a moment or for a while, a lot of people felt like it was just going to be swords, but with Whitebeard's glaive, and again, looking at the illustration of how Oda is trying to say the famed swords. It says defamed swords, but it's not just swords. They're blades or weapons. We see an arrow. We see even a saber. I don't think Shanks's griffin has been revealed to be a supreme grade or an excellent grade or whatever. It seems to be a regular weapon, but we'll see. It could be revealed later. We then get to the meeting of Zora and Luffy, and it was a meeting that we had been anticipating for a while, because remember, Luffy went to Whole Cake Island without Zora and most of his crew, so we were waiting for Zora to see how would Zora react to Luffy just going away and deviating from the original plan because of Sanji. He told Luffy not to go and he went, and we know how Zora feels about if Luffy stands in the way of his goal or ever impeded his progress in any way, he would leave the crew. And a lot of people had theories as to Zora probably leaving the crew. Yeah, none of that happened. We just had a warm embrace between Zora and Luffy, and then we had a fight with them and Basil Hawkins. Something that kind of gets lost from time to time is Zora's relationship with Luffy, because they don't really show it too much, but they're really great friends. They have a really great relationship in which they understand that they balance each other out. They're complete polar opposites as far as how they handle situations and how they go about just daily life, but that's what you need in a second in command or vice captain or whatever you want to classify Zora as. He fits the bill for Luffy. And of course, a lot of people do think Zora should be the captain, or they think based on Zora's personality, they wonder how he isn't the captain. So it's a pretty weird and interesting dynamic. I'm sorry, I keep going off on tangents, but it's just so much to talk about just within Wano. It's a lot of underlying themes that, we don't get to talk about or touch on at all. So these are honestly giving me more ideas as far as like what I can talk about, because they're right in front of us, but we don't talk about them because we have more interesting things going on. So like the Zora and Luffy dynamic, it's not talked about because right after Hawkins shows up. So it's like, oh shit, Zora and Luffy versus Hawkins. Let's focus on that. The Luffy and Zora versus Hawkins interaction was amazing to me because, again, Hawkins is one of the most mysterious characters in One Piece, and the Zora and Luffy dynamic when they're together is just so beautiful on screen. We can't forget Luffy took that sword from Hitetsu, so now Zora is interested in this, as Luffy put it, a verily good blade, and the entire time while fighting this fodder with Hawkins, he's worried about the blade that Luffy has. So it's reminiscent to the early days of One Piece when the crew was together all the time, and Luffy was just doing random things, and Zora was just getting pissed because he was doing them, but he appreciated Luffy for just being Luffy. We got a reveal of Hawkins' Devil Fruit, and we saw some cool abilities that Hawkins could use, and I think we got some end of arc exposition as far as like what could possibly happen once Hawkins defects, because we know it's going to happen, right? With Hawkins and his special abilities in which he can use his straw man as a stand-in, so if he gets hurt or killed, his follower gets hurt. It made for a difficult matchup for Luffy and Zora. Of course, they were trying to protect Otama as well. But back to the exposition I think we got. Hawkins mentions that he has a card. And he says it has some inherent risks, right? But it's one that can expand one's power beyond its natural limits. And for this, we thought, okay, based on what Hawkins is saying here, more than likely Luffy will be the one to use this card on, or he will use the card on, and Luffy for that moment will be on Yonko level. He will be able to fight with Kaito, with Hawkins' help. Most hated this idea because of how Luffy seemingly in every fight seems to get a bump or some help or a little plot push, right? And people felt like this was another way for Luffy to get to that level. I think Oda is basically telegraphing this to just throw a huge wrinkle into it so that we don't know what's coming. But it really could play out this way based on how everything is being set up. And I'm not mad with either one. We also met Otsuru and Okiku, and knowing what we know now about Okiku, everything is just a bit more funny because Okiku is really tall, and Zoro the entire time is like, damn, you're kind of huge. And Luffy's just like, well, Big Mom was way bigger. But Okiku is, yeah. Anyway, past the Okiku thing and Otsuru, and a lot of people felt like Otsuru was going to be a traitor. That remains to be seen. I don't think so. We got introduced to some of Kaito's gifters, and that this was giving us some inclination as far as like Kaito's army and what we can expect. We saw Hold'em, Batman, Gazelle Man, and for the most part, people were underwhelmed as far as the actual antagonistic forces that Kaito had because they did not match up to what Big Mom had at the time. For Whole Cake Island, when we ended up there, one of the antagonists that we met was Tamago, and of course Peckham's was helping us, but Tamago was the main person because he was searching for Pedro, and we kind of felt like Hold'em and those guys, it didn't measure up, right? It felt like Kaito's crew was just there and they couldn't compete with anyone that we had on our side. We then get a sumo match with Luffy and Hiroshima, then Holem gets one shot, and Speed comes over to our side via Tama's Devil Fruit power. It just felt like every single time Kaito gained an advantage as far as like his lower forces, we took it back immediately. And of course, all this time from Luffy and them maneuvering from Leftover Town to Bakura Town, Law and his crewmates, they're paying attention to them because they're like, they should be staying hidden. So Law is super worried, and of course, he has a run-in with Hawkins, and for Law and Hawkins, I love their interactions as well because they're somewhat similar, in which they're mysterious, somewhat broody characters. They're very smart, analytical, and their powers are layered, where it's not as simple to use their devil fruits. Meaning for their devil fruits, if you haven't had them for a while, you probably can't use it well. So when they do use them, it's so technical and it's so well thought out and fleshed out. It just looks great. Before we move on, again, with Hawkins and Law, it was funny because Hawkins was welcoming Law, and we're at chapter 918 now, where Hawkins is welcoming Law to Wano. And Oda was dropping subtle nuggets in between the chapters and just letting us know, okay, Wano may be a Sabaody part 2. And of course, Sabaody, we had all the supernovas there, and they went against the pacifists and the admirals, or the admiral, just Kizaru was there. So I'm not sure if this is a hint that all the supernovas are going to go against Kaito. I mean, I think it's kind of overkill based on how strong I think the supernovas are going to be by the end of Wano as far as like when they face Kaito, because it's not like they all face the admiral. Granted, back then they all couldn't beat an admiral anyway because they didn't have armament haki, and now it seems like Luffy's going to be the only one with advanced armament. If Kid has it as well, that would be great, but it seems unlikely. And this was some of the first inclination, well, not the first, because Law has been annoyed for a long time now with the Straw Hats, but they had a plan, and they were trying to follow through the plan. Of course, they broke that. So Law at this point, he's annoyed with them because meeting Hawkins, who knows about the identity of not only Law, but all the Straw Hats, Law said it was the worst possible thing. But then moving forward, we learned so much about the country of Wano because of what Luffy and Zora did by just showing themselves, infiltrating and going about Wano. It made Luffy recognize that he can't just leave Wano without things being fixed. Not only for Momo, but for Tama. And that's where he makes a vow, saying that by the time he leaves the country, it'll be a place in which he can eat as much as he wants every single day. Luffy has this weight on his shoulders now because of Ace dying, and Tama was waiting for Ace, so he's carrying on Ace's will. That's a microcosm of what One Piece is in a nutshell. In chapter 919, things get a bit weird because now we're going to the grave of the previous people of Wano. At this point in the story, Wano has a set goal to take down Kaito, but not only to take down Kaito, but to restore Wano to his previous glory. It was showing the people are impoverished. The place is just bad overall, and Kaito doesn't seem to care. Taking down Kaito, it's just better for the people. It's a lot of variables at this point because, you know, Hawkins and Kaito's subordinates had not looked that impressive up to now. So we were wondering, we were waiting, when is it going to happen? When are we going to meet someone strong? Chapter 19 kind of answers some of those questions because we meet Kiyoshiro, and he had a certain air about him in which he was making fun of the things Orochi was scared of. So this could potentially be a guy, that's what we said, who could compete. But then I suppose it got a bit weird because we started to ask questions. How did it fall into ruin? And then of course we go to the ruins of Odin Castle. And then of course Kinemon drops the bomb saying that we crossed through time and we arrived here from the Wano of 20 years ago. That made a lot of people skeptical because time travel in anime or in manga in general sometimes is not handled well. But for most, I guess I can speak for myself, I was encouraged because it's Oda and I was going to give Oda the benefit of the doubt, and I think he handled it really well. It removed the factor of going back into the past by saying that Lady Tokyo, of course, Odin's wife, who was the one who had the time ability to travel into the future, but not go into the past. It removed any possible ramifications of going back and changing things and affecting the future. In addition to that, we got the lore of Odin and what Odin was trying to accomplish before his death, and then some more about how he died. Of course, some of the information was left out on purpose because we're going to get that at the end, but we are starting to get a clearer picture of Odin at this point, and also a clearer picture of Kaito, because it did say Kaito had occupied Wano for 20 years now. It filled in the gaps that we had, right? We had a bunch of gaps as far as like, okay, Kinemon, how did you get to Dressrosa? How did all these things happen? And that filled in all those gaps. So now we're here, and the goal is now the Fire Festival, in which we're going to carry out a raid. The alliance of the Minks, the Straw Hat crew, and the Samurai to take down Kaito. With this, we had to figure out the logistics, but of course we had a major moment with Jack and Shutenmaru. And that kind of scaled characters for us a bit, in which we kind of judged Shutenmaru on a different level because he was able to harm Jack. And for a lot of people, Jack was immovable. What Jack was able to accomplish on Zou by fighting Inarashi and Nekomamushi at the same time, people had him on a pedestal. He was also able to destroy several ships of the Marines, with Fujitora, Sengoku, and Tsuru being nearby. So people had Jack on somewhat of a pedestal. So for Shutamaru to scar Jack the way he did, it made us wonder about the samurai of Wano. We also can't forget what Akainu said. Kizaru was ready to go to Wano, and Akainu said, wait, we don't know what's there. And of course, we have to be wary of the samurai of Wano. And throughout the story of One Piece, the samurai of Wano has been lauded. They've been hyped up to be very powerful. And seeing this from Shutamaru, it all culminated here, which, well, damn, they are really powerful. And I think at this point, what we thought was a culmination was just the beginning of an amazing moment, right? In which we saw Shutamaru, we saw Jack, but then we saw Kaito's true form. So just looking back from the beginning of Wano to now, everything seems to be pacing out correctly. There were no draggy chapters, a bunch of hype moments up to chapter 921 where Kaito showed up, not much to complain about. Of course, the main thing was that Oda was purposefully leaving gaps in the story we were getting in regards to Oden. Because Oda wants us to get something at the end, like a huge reveal about Oden or how Orochi was able to take down Oden. And of course, he's saving that. And I guess that could be a critique in which Oda tries to save too many things. So it saves and saves and saves. So then when we finally see it, it's like, okay, I understand why you would save it, but it would have been just as good if you had done X. I think for these 5 chapters in Wano, being in the community was the most amazing thing because these were some of the most amazing and talked about chapters because we got so much information. And I'm talking about going back to chapter 918, 919, in which we got the lore of Oden and of course the ruins of Oden Kazuki. It gave us not only the lore of Wano, but again, like I said, filled in the gaps. And now we were getting Luffy versus Kaito. And Luffy versus a Yonko was something that had been discussed after Katakuri, even before then, saying how would Luffy stack up to not only the Yonko, but the admirals. So now it was a way to gauge Luffy against his contemporaries or how he's viewed by a lot of the people now since the Big News Morgans thing. And honestly, the fight did not disappoint because it kind of gave us a scale, right? Luffy went gear 4th, used some of his best attacks, and then Kaito used one attack. I mean, the main thing here that I want to point out is that after the chapter in which Luffy used gear 3rd and knocked Kaito out of his dragon form, people were worried because of course Kaito showed up drunk. And then people quickly had flashbacks, PTSD, back to Whole Cake Island, in which Whole Cake Island, Big Mom was nerfed for the most of it. So people immediately jumped on their horse and they left Wano. They said this will not be good because Kaito will be like Big Mom and be nerfed the entire time. Seeing Kaito for the first time in his dragon form and him being drunk, it was alarming, but I didn't immediately jump to the conclusion that Kaito is going to be just like Big Mom, but I understood why people would say that. However, our concerns were quickly erased when Kaito made short work of Luffy. Mind you, this is the same Luffy that fought Katakuri for 11 plus hours, unlocked future sight, insane stamina, insane endurance, and got one shot by Yonko, who is the strongest thing in the world. It doesn't get much better than that, honestly, because I know a lot of people were saying, well, Luffy shouldn't have gotten one shot. And me personally, because of Luffy being upset at his friends being in danger, he wasn't thinking. And that seems to be the route Oda's going with observation haki, in which you have to be focused. You have to be calm to use observation haki. Luffy, in this moment, he just forgot about Law's plan. He did not care. He was not calm at all. After the Kaito thing, of course, Kaito mentioned Kid, in which Kid was someone who had Conqueror's haki as well, so that was an important nugget for us to know. But this was the introduction to the Udon arc. Luffy being imprisoned, I have no problem with moments like that because, of course, with not only new allies, but seeing Luffy in a group of people that don't know about him, immediately he's underestimated, but by the end of it, they're all overwhelmed by how brilliant Luffy is. And of course, I don't mean intellectually. Brilliant as far as how much of a star he is, how much he shines in the darkest light, how much Luffy shines in the darkest moments. And in chapter 924, we meet Eustace Captain Kidd, and him and Luffy are separated by a cage or barrier, and that's the end of Act 1. I cannot rate Act 1 anything less than a 9 out of 10. The way Oda handled pacing, the amazing moments, the lore, I would say Act 1 was perfect. We got so much amazing information from this act. We got Kaito's Devil Fruit reveal. We got Lady Toki and the Time Fruit. We got Hawkins versus Law. We had a Zora and Luffy reunion. But of course, Wano doesn't end here. I think it's best to separate these videos because Act 1 and Act 2. Act 2 isn't done yet, but this is just a dissection and my overview of what Wano was for Act 1. If you think I should do up to where Act 2 is now, you can let me know in the comment section down below. I can. But so far, by the end of Act 1, Wano is amazing. I cannot complain about it. It has so many good parts. And again, it's reflected in the community. Just how people reacted to Act 1. No complaints from me. But let me know your thoughts below. How did you feel about Wano Act 1? Did it bore you? Did it live up to the hype? Did anything annoy you? Leave your thoughts below. And again, if you'd like me to do Act 2 up to where Act 2 is now, let me know. I will do it. And I might just do it anyway because it makes sense to just complete what I'm doing, right? But leave your thoughts below. Make sure to like the video and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.